because you have to watch it hand to hand. It's hand to hand. Like the to beat recipe that I've got is like 6 pages long because I wrote it out as my grandmother made it. There's something beautiful about that it's a recipe book can't give it to you. It's like this is an intergenerational food. This is complex, slow cooked with a lot of heart, time, and love food.
The recipes we can record, but they're not going to come out the same if you don't spend all those hours in the kitchen.
They won't.
Ayuni is a term of endearment passed from grandmother to granddaughter. These are the stories of our Middle Eastern and North African Jewish grandmothers. Hi, I'm Drora Rusi, an American-born Hungarian Jew married to an Israeli-born Yemenite Jew.
Hi, I'm Dalia Arusi Diveroli, and my kids are represented by 4 communities: Yemen, Ashkenaz, Libya, and Italy.
Hi, I'm Sarah Sassoon, and I'm an Australian-born Iraqi Jew. Come explore with us traditions that have traveled through many lands to our hands today.
At the Eid al-Banat celebration that Sarah and I hosted, we had Shulamit, Sarah's 86-year-old neighbor from Mosul, share a wonderful tradition that connects last week's episode to this week's. She told us of a gathering called Tabakh al-Banat, where every girl would cook something and give it to elderly women to taste. The women would give a mark and add tips of if it required more salt, sugar, etc. Thank you, Shulamit, for sharing another amazing gathering of women that centers on food and maintains tradition. And now, for our episode.
Yeah, this is the food episode. This is the fun one.
Yeah, okay.
So for the food episode, I think you need to serve us some tea.
Okay, first we're going to have tea for the food episode. This is my grandmother's tea. I put just black tea with some cardamom because Iraqi tea has cardamom, hail. My father swears it's the healthiest thing in the whole world.
It always makes me laugh that in Israel they call it hell.
Yeah. Hail, as my grandmother also used to call it hail. I don't even know how to say it another way in some ways.
Yeah, I didn't know it was cardamom. I didn't know what cardamom was for a long time. I don't know.
That's right. That's a
Oh,
thing.
right, because it's not in foods that you ate growing up. So it wasn't a spice you needed to know the name for.
So I had ow.
So would you like some sugar? In Iraq, they actually had sugar cubes. So I love my sugar cube. Do you want some sugar?
Yeah, I want to drink it how you drink it.
Okay. So as a kid, I used to put lots of sugar in my tea because I didn't like. And do you want milk? They didn't have it with milk, but I used to have mine with milk as a kid.
Yeah, let's go back to your childhood. I mean, what just... The set's so pretty too.
So these are actually from Turkey, these glasses. I schlepped them back, even though you can get it now in Israel.
Yeah.
They're just... Yeah, I think tea's actually one of the most important things to Iraqis, more than coffee. I know there's this whole thing about coffee in the coffee shops. But do you want milk?
No.
That actually the tea was the most important. In fact, they used to joke. They didn't have, this is for me.
Thank you.
And let me give you a clean spoon for stirring. This is like really like being in the home, right?
I know this is like the women after they get on.
That's how I felt preparing this. I felt like, oh my gosh, I'm having tea and I'm having my friends over and we are going to chat and have interesting conversations and have tea and yummy things.
See, we finished grinding the flour and kneading it, putting it in.
And we also have kakat. You could have kakat with your tea. This kakat's
It's exactly what it looks exactly like. I don't have to taste the same, but it looks exactly like what my grandmother makes. And there's I mean, she didn't put sesame on it, but it's the same thing.
In Iraq, but it also didn't put sesame.
It's interesting. They call it kaik or kaka.
Kakat. Yeah, I think kakat's the plural, maybe. I don't know.
Kayak is higher.
Kayak is the one. And, so I'm still learning. There's some here.
We'll get there.
First, it's another tea. Okay, well, just to say, the joke was that if they didn't have tea in the Mabarot, in the refugee camps, when the Iraqi Jews came to Israel, then they really would have gone back. But there was tea, so they stayed.
Well, so many people went back and forth in Iraq for a while.
Once they left, they couldn't go back.
Right.
With the laissez-passer passport.
After a certain point, but you're talking about before that point.
Before there was movement between Iraq and Israel. My grandfather he was in Lebanon studying, and then he went to Israel to visit family in Jerusalem. And this was in the 20s.
Right.
Or 30s, in the 30s, I think. So there's always this interaction, and also the interaction with the food. The food also tells a story, like you were saying about the kak. So my neighbor from Mosul made the kak. I did not make it. She
is different then on the.
It's different to my grandmother's. My grandmother's wasn't as soft.
Yeah, okay. I was gonna say this
It's softer, like
my grandmother makes.
My grandmother used to make it much harder.
Right. It's almost like a cracker. Like it's really
much harder. But I think maybe she prefers it soft. And I don't
like the cardamom in this. Sorry,
right?
It adds something.
So you can't have Iraqi tea without cardamom. And sometimes I think you can't have anything without cardamom, in a way. Like the baklava has cardamom, the quince jam does not have cardamom, but the apple jam has cardamom. And you could put cardamom in the quince jam, but I put cloves in my quince jam. I had a very big month of cooking Iraqi. I felt like I'd opened the Sultan's kitchen.
Definitely. Well, that's what I wanted to get into. You started to talk about the different foods, and as the expert, because you wrote, this is not a chalt.
Yes, this is not a chalt.
So the interactions between different foods, and I know many people I interviewed or I've spoken to. I had a friend who was born in Egypt and she moved to America, and I mean she's around 70 today, and she said she got to America and her mom would make her traditional Egyptian food to bring to school for lunch, and she was going to public school there, and it was really embarrassing. And she just said, "Can you just give me peanut butter and jelly challenge?" And those are the kinds of things that you said you grew up with this food and you didn't. And it's an interesting kind of cross-cultural thing when you talk about the different foods. So one of the things that we found when we talk about, and we'll get into your book too a little bit because it's important for here, but so I'm a Hungarian background, my husband's Yemenite, and we both make the same thing for Friday with the extra dough from either the challah or the kubana or whatever it is you're making. Yemenites call it zalabia, and Hungarians call it langos. And it's the exact same thing. It is fried dough that's left over from the challah or the kubana or whatever bread you're making Shabbat. That's what it is. You might season it a little bit differently, but really not. It's really just basically the same thing. And I love the interaction between those.
It would be so interesting to know the root of it, because it's sometimes interesting to know that the Ottoman Empire spread so far that a lot of food spread with the empire and became something that people shared across, like baklava, for example. I'm sitting with a Romanian friend and a Moroccan friend who were all discussing baklava that our grandmothers made.
All the way to Romania.
Oh, no, yes. One was actually also from, her father was from Salonika. She had a Greek background.
Interesting.
So Greek background, Romanian. So we all had different grandmothers. One had Romanian and Moroccan. Another had Slovenian, not Slovenian, Salonican, and I can't remember her other one. And I was all Iraqi. And we were discussing baklava, the different types of things you put in baklava. And that was because of the Ottoman influence across.
Yeah, no, it's also, you feel like that was my grandmother's thing, my Hungarian grandmother's thing. And that was my husband's Yemenite Friday afternoon. That's what you had. That was, if you were lucky enough to be in the room in the kitchen, that's what you got. It was a special treat. It was exciting,
and how wonderful that such different backgrounds shared the same food.
Right?
It's commonality. That commonality that's created through food is not for no reason that we say that we break bread, and that's how we connect as humans. It's very united. Amazes us.
And it's also something that's really connected also, where we bring the food to our Jewishness, because it's essentially fried dough. You could even say that it's similar to sfinge for Moroccans, which is also why I started making zalabia for Hanukkah, because I'm like, okay, sfinge, fried dough, it all makes sense. I just don't have the energy to make it other times. It's a Friday. Exactly. But your memories of it and my father's memories of it are from Friday. It's connected to the Shabbat preparations and nights. That's how our grandmothers also connected us to our religion through their cooking.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Food's more than just food. It marks time.
Yeah.
And in Iraqi culture, that's what it did. There was a schedule of food. So, for example, every Thursday night, if you walked the streets of Jewish Baghdad and the Jewish areas, you'd smell the same smell. It was kitchery. It was lentils and rice and cooking. And that's what everyone was eating on Thursday night. Everyone had kitchery. You speak to any Iraqi person, you ask them, what did you eat Thursday night? That's a kitchery. And then you also have the Tabit. That's what the book's about. This is not a challenge. It's about that every Shabbat for lunch, every Iraqi family would have Tabit. That was their challah, because you can't cook on Shabbats. They prepare, just like challah you prepare before, just like Europeans prepare challah for Shabbat with their meat and potatoes and barley. This is stuffed chicken with rice and spices, baharat and cinnamon, and it's a whole different dish to challah. So that's what the book's about. Is like, I grew up in Sydney, and all my friends were Ashkenazi. All of them had challah, but at my house on Shabbat we had tabit. My grandmother made tabit, and it had eggs, and it was so different. So when I wrote the book, I imagined to myself, what's it like if there was a challah competition, and we had tabit? Yeah. And everyone will tell me exactly what happens in this book, which is, this is not a challah. You can't make this. This is not a challah. And that's what the book's about, and about this little girl in Mira's embarrassment, because that's how I would have felt. I felt very embarrassed. But she, in the book, does a lot better than me, as I did as a little girl. And she, with her grandmother, her nana, they present the challah. Her nana says to her, you need to know, this is a recipe that's gone from generation to generation. It's traveled many lands to get here in Australia and to be with you. And you're sharing this with all these people. You're sharing something that's very special. So she gets to share that, and she, learns pride about where she comes from as an Iraqi Jewish girl. And that's what I wish happened for me when I was a little girl. But there was no such thing. I barely knew what it meant to be an Iraqi Jew, besides the fact that I really liked to be.
Right. And also, when we start moving away from our families, then also we don't have that, like you said, about the South African family.
Right.
I know that the way I connected to the Yemeni side of our family is I had to go learn how to make kubana. I had to go learn how, and nobody has recipes. Like we said, nothing's written down.
Right.
I had to go stand there, and actually I recorded two of my father-in-law's sisters making kubana, making khilbe, and I got the secret ingredient to khilbe.
Which is?
Yes. Now I tell you. It's putting tomato when you soak the fenugreek seeds.
Oh.
It takes off the acidity. But her daughter was shocked that she told me about it. It was hysterical.
And now we've told all of you. So everyone's going to tell that. We'll have to put the khilba recipe into our notes, right? We'll put all the recipes in the notes for this episode.
So one thing about sharing it is, one year we did that for Purim. It was Erev Shabbat, right? So it was a Friday Purim, must have been. And we decided to do a Yemenite one. And so everybody got a little kubana and a little khilda. And then we wrote all the benefits of eating fenugreek.
And there really are a lot of benefits.
There are so many benefits.
Yes, moral of the story, though, is that the reason that Yemenites don't die of heart attacks from all of their oily foods is because of the fenugreek.
Right. There you go.
Counteracts all the oil, apparently.
I grew up with khilba and had no idea it was Yemeni. Oh, my father loved khilba. And this is the thing about when all the Jews came from the different Arab countries to Israel. Mm-hmm. They shared their foods. So my father, when he left for Sydney in the late 60s, his whole family went. They took with them not just the Iraqi Jewish food, they took with them all the Jewish food.
That's amazing.
Yeah, there was a lot of interaction with food here. And so my grandmother used to make these cookies, and I couldn't figure out when I was doing my Iraqi research, why am I not seeing these cookies as Iraqi cookies? They were my grandmother's cookies. And I found out they were Libyan from Tripoli. She had a Tripoli neighbor in the Maba, in the refugee camp, and they swapped recipes. And she learned how to make these pinroll cookies with like chocolate and vanilla. And I only liked the chocolate as a kid, so I don't eat the chocolate. But there's a lot of research. There's a lot of research to do with food.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that you say about the ma'abrot, because also nowadays a lot of these foods are in restaurants around Israel, which is really cool, but also some of it just like childhood memories and where they are today don't connect. Like we were saying with kubane, you can get it just at a random Yemenite restaurant today, but like to me, it's Shabbat. Kubane is Shabbat. You don't eat kubane outside of Shabbat, and it also has to do with how it was made. It was something that was slow cooked, so it would be ready for Shabbat. And I love that other people get to experience it, but it also, there's some part of me that it's like, well, where's the culture part of it?
Right, it's lost its story.
Yeah.
Because it's more like Tabit. You can't serve Tabit in the week. You just can't. It's Shabbat lamb. So, and also the eggs, you make sabich. Now sabich sandwiches are throughout Israel, although you can get away with that. Sabich's amazing. Sabich is, it used to be in the laffa because the Iraqi pita bread used to be really big. So they'd make eggs in the Tabit overnight, they'd be cooked, and then for breakfast the next day they'd eat the eggs as a sandwich with pickles and amba. Amba's a story in of itself. It's mango pickle from India, and vegetables and tahina and parsley, and they'd wrap it with an eggplant, fried eggplant. That's very important ingredient. Sabich, and they'd roll it up, and that would be their Shabbat joy, that sabich sandwich. And that traveled to Israel with the Iraqi Jews, and now it's a staple Israeli food. That even, like, everyone says it's a Jewish food. It's just a Jewish food.
Right. There are many Jewish foods, and that's why you have parallels across different cultures also for these Jewish foods, different types of breads or different types of Shabbat foods.
And that's why it's important to preserve them, I feel, because we'll lose them. Like kupa, which is much more complicated to make than sabich, is a very particularly Iraqi Jewish food. It'll be really sad the day that we don't know how to make kupa anymore. So my mission in life is to perfect it and pass it on.
That's it. We need to
That's very difficult.
or recording things. Or
The only problem with writing and recording, I realized when I was with my Iraqi neighbor down the road, when I was learning to make her type of kupa, I realized there's so much I didn't know about making kupa because you have to watch it hand to hand. It's hand to hand. Like the Tavit recipe that I've got is like 4-6 pages long because I wrote it out as my grandmother made it.
well, that was like when I went to my husband's aunt's.
Right.
So that you had to watch them.
You had to be with them, and there's something beautiful about that. That it's a recipe book can't give it to you. It's like this is an intergenerational food. This is complex, slow cooked with a lot of heart, time, and love food. So,
And that's how people would learn it, by a lot of the times because the women were bound to the house. So so they were around their mothers and their grandmothers all the time, and they just watched and they tried and they prepared, and that's how they learned. And that's something that we can't necessarily replicate today because of how our world is today. Yeah, which is a shame. And also part of the recipes we can record, but they're not going to come out the same if you don't spend all those hours in the kitchen.
they won't. It doesn't work. I've tried. It doesn't work.
Yeah, or if you put in the amount of oil that they put in. It's just not the same.
Yeah, you have to do all that oil. It's true.
But that's why it's something special, really, that the women were bound to the kitchen, but that's also where they continue the heritage, not just through food, but if they're spending all their time there and the other women in the home were spending their time with them, then, like we said, they were singing songs, they were talking in their own dialect, they were whatever they had to pass along was done through the process of waiting for the food to be.
They were passing down wisdom. This is ideal. I'm very nostalgic. I'm an idealist, and I imagine they were also bickering and bitching to each other as well, and gossiping about the neighbors. But I think there was a chance where women were held together by other women. It wasn't like in those days they'd go to therapists or anything. There was no such thing as psychology in Iraq. There was no such thing as depression either, by the way. I looked up depression in this Babylonian Jewish remedies book, and they've got like a section for dikaon, like that bit. But for hair loss, they've got like 2 pages. So it made me think, well, was there no depression then? But of course there was, but they dealt with it in just a different way. It was something that you talked about. You were with other people all the time, for better or for worse, that people lived in a compound in Iraq where you'd live with the wife, when the bride would always go to the husband's home. Complicated as well.
Which we'll talk about also with the Hina ceremony. Yeah, it'll be a different
one. But it didn't mean that when they're making kupa, you're not making it alone like I do in my kitchen. It's the mother, nor the daughter, nor the sisters, the children, the daughter. It's like intergenerational. And within that, in my idyllic world, they're sharing their stories.
Well, but we know it because we know that's when the songs were transmitted to the next generation. And the songs are poems, they're stories. They're like, the old, when they used to say tell the whole story of the Odyssey, for example. Like it's that kind of concept of you're transmitting your knowledge, you're transmitting.
Because they also didn't read or write.
Right.
My grandmother didn't read or write. Yes, some did, definitely. And with modernity in Iraq, more and more read and write. My other grandmother did read and write. She wanted to study nursing. It's a whole nother story. But my father's mother did not read or write. So for her, the food was another text. It was her text.
Very much so. That and like we'll get into again the embroideries, things around there.
Their hands was another language.
Yeah.
And they were very wise. Like she was very wise, my father's mother, very intuitive. She could read people. She could read food, people, weather, gardens, flowers. So there's a different way of reading this world.
And it's also how we kind of touched upon it, but the food was a way of them expressing their love. They weren't necessarily saying, except for Ayuni, they weren't necessarily saying, I love you in all these different ways. But if they were trying to push more food into your mouth, that's their way of expressing it. And to some, it was even an insult if you weren't going to eat their food.
Yeah, very much. So I remember when I'm studying today Arabic and what he said, like, about food and wine to be eaten. But that line, I'm like, I know that. That line I know.
And one of the other things you're transmitting through food is the importance of holidays and the importance of life cycle events. Because like you said, you knew that it was going to be Shabbat when you smelled the tabit. Or you knew that whatever day of the week it was or whatever, but that you also get into the different holidays. And like you mentioned that you made zalabia for Hanukkah. But the different Hanukkah foods, the different Purim foods, the Mimuna foods, the mufleta, that's what it is. Mufleta is a plain milk cookie.
No. It looks like a pancake. No, mufleta is just a pancake.
I would pass it on to you when I'd say, this is the research I'm doing.
No, see, that is upsetting. So I thought,
Mufleta is a pancake that you put some of the stuff on and you fold and eat like that. Kind of like a bit.
There's a lot of, that's like kahi actually. In Iraq, they used to talk about festivals. Like every festival had its own food.
Yeah.
So for Shavuot, you'd have kaima, which I was talking about, buffalo, a cream made from buffalo milk. And it's thick. If you go to Turkey, when I was in Istanbul, I had some. It's delicious. And in Turkey, they also serve it with date syrup. So this is my homemade date syrup over here. That makes a Pesach, and it's like it's now fermented, so it's really delicious. You'll have to taste some. So date syrup we use on. So for example, what's Pesach without date syrup? What's Shavuot without kemar and date syrup? With kai served with a pancake that you fold over the cream of the kaimer. So it's like there's similarities throughout the regions. But again, for me, the kaimer and kahi, I think Shavuot. There's so beautiful, the festivals being framed through food. It also makes it very accessible for children to remember. So you bring out the chalek and it's like, this is Pesach and this is the charoset. This represents the mud that the Israelites built the pyramids with. This is their suffering. And actually my aunt says, well, look, this is the original charoset because look how brown it is. It's like real mud.
Yeah, charoset is a great example of how the food evolved and is different in different places. And one of the things that you don't think about necessarily is the Middle East was closer to the Far East. Right. So you've had those spices, and that's why I know there are so many jokes about Ashkenazi foods being bland, but there wasn't that connection to the Far East, so they just didn't. I know my mother-in-law talks about her family importing spices from Yemen, from the Far East, and that was one of the things. That's how they got the spices, these spicy spices, and from India or from beyond.
Yeah. And it's from ancient times, Solomon's times. We know that there are these spice roots.
Yeah, and I wanted just to go back to what you were saying, but also a way of educating the kids, because there's a Libyan tradition in Shavuot to make these cookies in different shapes that basically tell the story of Shavuot. So there's one that's in the shape of the Luchot Brit, of the tablets. There's one in the shape of a ladder for Moshe to climb up to Har Sinai. There's one in the shape of, some of them are a little bit far-fetched, but like one in the shape of a bag for what he had to bring with him of the mountain, and one in the shape of glasses because it was hard for him to see. All these different shapes that had to do with the story, so they could tell the story through, and they would make them together with the grandmother or the mother, and that's how they would pass on the story of Shavuot, which is a literal way of doing it as opposed to the theoretical way that he presented. But I want to ask you about the cheese because, I mean, I discovered this, that it existed in Iraqi culture, but like there are so many cultures in North Africa and the Middle East that just didn't have milk products. Like that wasn't in the menu.
Really?
Yeah.
Like my husband's grandmother from Libya to this day will not eat anything with milk in it. If it has butter in it, nothing.
Wow. So in Iraq, it's a big part of the menu. They even clarified butter through rice, and then they cook the rice, and it'll be like this amazing butter rice.
Really?
Yeah. It's a big part, like in the evening for dinner. So for lunch, they'd have like kuppa stew or like a heavier meat meal. And then in the late evening, they'd have like a light sap of like watermelon and Iraqi cheese, which was like feta. It's like a salty cheese.
And yeah, they came all offered to Syria too. I know there were some cheeses and
Right. What's it called? Sambusak has. Sambusak Jiban has, yeah.
And that's my favorite. I think that's one of my favorite things in the world, sambusak jiban. It's the cheese sambusak. And that's the Iraqi cheese. A whole bunch of cheeses. My grandmother used to make a ricotta. And I think that's the thing, that everyone makes things differently. That's what I've learned. Because I've been interviewing a lot of Iraqi women, and they've all served me sambusak. And I tasted a lot of different sambusaks. And I'm realizing, okay, when I make sambusak, as long as it tastes good, it doesn't matter. And my eggs always taste exactly like my grandmother. But sometimes I know I'm not going to get there. And I think I have to now accept it's okay. That I'm going to have my own signature taste that I'll pass to the children.
it's very funny because my husband's aunts, you were saying that you envisions the kitchen as this idealistic place where the women were all good to each other. But to this, well, now unfortunately they've been passing away. But until about 10 years ago, it was still she is the best Cubana maker. Why would I go learn Cubana with somebody else? Because she's the one that does this Cubana. We have to go learn Chilba with her because her Chilba is the right one. And
Right, that's for sure. There's competition, there's judgmentalism. They're very sharp as well. As nice as my grandmother was, she was sharp. And if she did not like someone, she let them know. And like when my cousin got engaged and he sent her flowers, the khatan, the groom sent her flowers, her fiance, and my grandmother's like shook her head. She's like, what is this? He said, because in Iraq it's in jewelry and a whole tray of sweets talking about food. Everything was around food. Every life cycle event also had a whole tray. You'd have the lozina, you'd have all these beautiful sweets. And the lozina I made, for example, is a Iraqi sweet. It was like being in the Sultan's kitchen, because I'm sure they made it in Turkey as well, in Constantinople, because it took me hours, and it's a very specific quince, labor-intensive, very simple ingredients, just quince and sugar.
Oh.
Very simple, and then almonds sprinkled on top. Look at all my hard work. It's a thing of soaking. I actually followed Linda Dango's recipe. It's in her book, From the Tigris to the Thames. She's got a new cookbook out, and she has lozina in it. So I actually messaged her and I said, I did. She said, well done. She has, so I worked it too. But I was always curious to know what's it like, because you can't understand the food until you made it.
Right.
You can't understand the culture. Well, I can't understand my grandmother, I feel, until I've made all the food she made. She never made lozina. I don't remember making lozina. And I now know why. And also the truth is that I don't think they had quinces in Australia. So that's another thing. Also, with spices in Australia, I'm sure they did not have baharat. She'd have had to really figure out how to make her own baharat, her own spices, things in the 60s, late 60s, 70s in Australia. It wasn't like it is now, so multicultural. So it is interesting when you also move countries, our recipes also sometimes change a bit.
It's gonna have to. Yeah. Even flour, you can say, isn't the same in different countries, so it's definitely gonna come out different. And I think also, like, I don't know, I get this feeling that maybe some of the women were holding on to the recipes longer than when they moved to Israel, Australia, France, the United States, than they would when they were in their origin countries. Because I just feel like there were certain people who didn't let you enter the kitchen. Like, they wanted to make everything for you.
Right.
He's like, they wouldn't. My aunts, who my mother mentioned, would wake up at 4 a.m. on Friday morning to make pitot, like garbage bag loads of pitot. It was just for the entire family. Why couldn't one of their kids, their in-laws do it? I don't know, but they literally make it for everyone. And when my mother came, they just kind of like laughed at her when she wanted to film them, because she's like, I had to just make it for you. Why do you want the recipe? And literally, it wasn't just pitas. Like, they would be in the kitchen making everything for Shabbat, all like pitas, kubane, filbe, by the loads for everyone. And lechuch, and people would just be walking in and out all day long, picking up their delivery. Like, they made it for specific grandkids and also cousins, and just distribute it. So my husband, when he started to want to make Libyan foods, he asked his grandmother, and she said, you have to work your way up to mafroon. I mean, he started with other things, but like, that's it. It really is a piece of art when she makes it. But she still won't give him the recipe. Like, he's not at that level cap.
So, how do you feel about men cooking?
I mean, her husband definitely never stepped in the kitchen, but I think she's happy that, like, she can pass along the recipes to someone who's interested. She has more grandsons than granddaughters, but like, his mother also has started to make some of the foods, or has been making for a couple of years now. And part of it is also because they're distant from her, because they used to live in Italy next to her, and now that they're further away, you want to re-provide those recipes. But again, you don't have the time that she does. But anyway, what I was trying to say is, you're like, there is like this part of them, like, hold on to it because it's theirs, and maybe other people won't put in the right effort to make it properly, or maybe it's like, we're in a new setting and now people don't have time for this, or I could just make it for you because I love you and this is my way of showing my love for you. There are definitely different ways of interpreting it, but I think there is something of like holding on to it, or being like, I don't need to pass this along, but like, we need them to pass it along. They can't disappear.
Also, they take it for granted, maybe, that this is, I feel like my grandmother, that's all she did all day. As in, that was who she was. She cooked. Any moment you walked into a house, there was something on the stove, and you were going to have a meal. And there's something so beautiful about that. Also, a Shulamit down the road for me, whenever I go to her, there's always fresh cookies. There's always something in the oven. There's always, I walked in the other day, and there was fresh kubbas being made, like masor kubbas, and I could not eat. Of course not. And there's like so warm and welcoming about, and nourishing about, that kind of home life, which doesn't exist in my house anymore so much. I mean, like, it's, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is to it. If it's so defined them, it's so their language, and it's not our language anymore. And sometimes I wonder if we've lost something very deep, because on one hand, I don't want to be in the kitchen all day. I did that last month for the festival, and there was something really, I think my family really enjoyed it. I think they really loved that there was so much food around, and there was so many meals full of fresh cooked food. And I know I held the family nicely for that month. It was long. My teeth were sore. And I then think that when my grandmother in Iraq, she had a much better system, because first of all, they didn't have high benches like we do in our kitchens. They had like a low bench like this. So they would sit. This is a perfect example, because it would be a tafta bench. It was called tafta. They'd sit on a wooden bench, like a wooden thing, and they'd sit low down. I've got a photo of it that we can put. I have the episode even showing how they'd be sitting around like this, different generations, making the kubba, the kahi, whatever it was they were making together, low down sitting. And it wasn't even like they had a kitchen like we have now. There was such a different type of kitchen.
Oh, yeah. Definitely. But it definitely didn't stop my aunts from standing in the kitchen when they came to us.
That's a thing as well.
Saw them on hours on end standing in the kitchen, making the things and adapting, like the pitas they made on the stovetop, which is definitely not how they made it in Yemen. But
Did they have a tabboon outside?
I don't know what they have. But they definitely didn't do it on a stovetop.
Right. They had clay
Ancestral. No, they didn't have the clay oven, these guys, but they had things that they could put certain pots and pans that they would put on top of the stove to mimic that.
Because I know in Iraq sometimes had a clay oven that you'd like, and you put it against the sides. They still have it short today.
They have it also for her bat mitzvah. We went up north and we made those pitos with, it was just, an old time village there.
It's amazing. I love that. It tastes so much better.
But you can also do it. You can mimic it definitely on the stove. They made it really well.
And now, but when I was a child and I saw my grandma making pita bread in the oven, I would be like, why are you making pita bread when I can go to Savion, which was the Israeli restaurant, and get fresh white pita bread? Here you've made wholemeal pita bread. And I didn't have the appreciation. It was delicious, but I just didn't have the appreciation that for her, she was making something from home.
And trying to give it over. I think that's one of the things we're missing. And you could say it with today, with all the technology and everything. It's the personal connection, and we know that from across. But if you look at some of the customs of the food of the time, for example, one of them that we were researching is when a woman had a baby in Yemen, mostly in Sana, because the smaller villages are different. But for 30 days, she was treated like a princess. She was given little chicks to eat every day. They would cook up, I don't know, 10, 15, I don't remember the exact number of chicks. And every day she would sit in a corner of the room. They would all feed her. They would come talk to her. They would come and everybody would bring food. And it's just, it's something that we're lacking. Even the basics, like we look at catering today. And
I don't.
That's nice. I don't often either, but I'm saying for big events,
right?
When we had our engagement party, all the aunts would come and bring their big pot, huge pots. I don't think they had pots like we have. They would bring their pots, and they would just spend the time in the kitchen cooking together. How amazing is that?
I think it's so special. I think for sure, that's the way they used to do it. They wouldn't, catering was it didn't exist for them. For them, they knew how to cook it, and they were going to cook it. And the truth is, when they came to Israel, they did have jobs. My grandmother did. Mm-hmm. A lot of the women, and especially the younger generation, like my aunt, they'd have jobs and they'd also cook. And I feel like my aunt does everything. She cooks, she cooks, and she also works. And somehow they do it all. And that I'm in awe of.
Well, you're talking about technology, but even more of the basics. All they had was pots. They used their hands for everything. That's also part of the reason that I don't know if I can necessarily replicate some of these recipes to put your hand into the scalding hot.
That?
It's the oil. The oil is there, and you don't use a spoon to put the mushroom into the.
Did they drop it in now?
Yeah, but
we all wanted to
splat us pretty close. And to see my grandmother's make pita is
my grandmother could take strain from the oven with her bare hands.
Yes.
Her hands were burned through, I'm sure of it. My hands are halfway burned through, but not half as burnt as hers.
Yeah.
It's amazing. You're right. They had just pots and pestle and mortars.
Yeah.
That was a huge one. And they didn't have magic mixers or anything like that. Organic crushers, you do it all with a pestle and mortar. It was very important.
Yeah, and that's one I think when you go learn by them. Today, some of them have evolved and done it, and they're like, this isn't really the way to do it. I'm just cheating.
It's a different taste, though, the pestle and mortar taste, right? It is. It's the slower, and it's a slower way of cooking, but you can tell in the taste that it's slower way. There's a whole art to it, which is really, really interesting.
So if we want to get into some of the details of different, maybe we each give an example or two about food that really says this is the holiday or this is a life cycle event or
that we haven't already said.
Yeah, we haven't already said. Well, you have the one from Rosh Chodesh Nisan.
Oh, that's a good one.
Oh, psisa. Well, psisa, yeah, for Libyan Jews, and it could be other North African communities, but God, I wish I knew exactly what sort of mix, but it definitely is some floured base. I don't know what flour, but some floured base with mixes of spices. And it's connected to Rosh Chodesh Nissan also as a way of teaching, because it has to do with the mortar of the Mishkan, because the Mishkan is associated with Rosh Chodesh Nissan. And it's actually an act of making the food together. So you have the base ready. They'll put in maybe almonds, sometimes some chocolate or something to add some sweetness. And then everyone takes a turn mixing in olive oil. And that's how you make the mortar, because essentially it's flour before that. And everyone takes a turn doing it, and you say a certain line. And you can add in certain other symbolisms. So you can add in key to your house, which you hopefully clean very well beforehand. Or a woman will put in like her engagement ring or things like that. And you mix it in, and then you have to leave it overnight so that like it all the flavor gets really strong. And yeah, it's a way of really engaging the household and teaching and making note of the holiday through food.
I love that. I feel like one of the things I feel we do when we share these stories of Jewish ritual through food, especially creative ones like that bring people together, especially the children, I think we can adopt them. Do you know what I mean? Like we can, like Rosh Chodesh Nisan, why not do that with your family and say, this is a Libyan custom, we're going to try it out this year. And in that way, because what is culture, what is custom, it's really for what it does for the future. It's not just about, like for me with my research, I can get this stuff in the past. My kids say to me, Mom, you think you're from Baghdad. They tease me that I think I'm from Amaba, right? They just laugh at me. And that made me think like, okay, it's not enough to learn about the past. I have to think like, what is this for the future? And there's such beautiful Jewish symbolism, like also the cookies on Shavuot. What a fun thing to do with kids for Shavuot. It doesn't matter where you come from. It's a fun way of symbolizing Shavuot and sharing the story of Shavuot.
Yeah, and I think also we spoke about this not in the setting, but a little bit of like, what does it mean to bring these customs to a woman's house, like to our households today as women, when we don't really have time for them. But thankfully in Judaism, we have a lot of opportunities to get ayah as a family, but this is just an added one. Like Rosh Chodesh Nisan in the evening, like it's probably in the middle of the week. There isn't like a reason for us not to be in our routine, but just for like a moment to break that routine, even if you say it's for 10 minutes, but like the whole family gathers for those 10 minutes to break the routine is a good reason to continue that tradition or to adopt it.
Right. Which brings me to like, why do like something about Judaism that I've been thinking about a lot lately is it's an ancient wisdom. And I think the festivals and all the ritual we do there's a wisdom to it that I'm appreciating more and more the older I get. And the older my kids get, maybe, because it's not so obvious that teenagers are going to come and join for, I don't know how many meals we had this festival. And there was a lot of together family time. And there was a wisdom there with these festivals, with these discussions, with all the ritual we had as a family. And it made me realize that as a Jew, because I'm born a Jew, it's so wonderful that I have access to the ritual and the wisdom because of my grandmother, because of my Iraqi Jewish background that was very strong on tradition, which Middle Eastern and North African Jews usually are. They're very connected to the stories they come from and because of the food, really. So it's interesting.
So we didn't talk about this and we can decide to tape it out afterwards, but one of the topics that you kind of touched upon is cultural appropriation. And I talk about that a lot because to me, especially, I mean, coming from an Ashkenazi background, and here we're having this podcast called Ayuni, but I see it as our story. And when you say it's the Jewish wisdom and it's the Jewish, I think adopting the Sisa ceremony, for example, is a beautiful thing. Why is that cultural appropriation?
I don't think it is. I think it's spreading Libyan Jewish wisdom. And as long as you maybe, if someone has an issue, you attribute the Libyan Jews, educate ourselves a bit about Libyan Jewish culture. I think are we seeking connection or separation? That's always my question when with ideologies, with thoughts. Are we seeking connection or separation? Are we seeking to increase joy, or are we seeking to create division and a suspicion? I think it's a beautiful thing to share. Obviously, I think cultural appropriation for me happens when someone takes, let's say, an Iraqi Jew and they make it into a stereotype and they don't understand what an Iraqi Jew is. And that to me is, maybe you should have researched properly. Maybe you should care enough to know that we're not stereotypical Middle Easterners. We have a real history and we have real nuances with our tradition. And every Iraqi person is different. We're not all just a caricature. So that's where I feel like maybe that people need to be more aware. Sometimes we can become like, oh, she's Middle Eastern, she'll just fit that Middle Eastern box, like. And that's not what we are. We're real people, real stories. And hopefully that's something we're sharing with this podcast.
Well, I think also that's what we're trying to say with this story is our story. And we might be distinct in that we've practiced this for a while, but it's connected to the larger story of the Jewish people. I mean, if you take ellipsis as an example, or the Shavuot cookies, they're based on Jewish stories. Like the Mishkan is everyone's. The holiday of Shavuot and Moshe going up to Har Sinai is everyone's. It's not Libyan. And even the foods, I mean, I think the whole concept of kubane, of slow cooking it, like slow cooking foods because it's Shabbat, because you want it to be hot the next day, like that's something that connect all of Jewish culture, which means everyone has some slow cooked food in there.
That's what I was hoping my book would create more conversation around. It hasn't really happened, but the truth is, from the book, everyone's meant to say, so wait, the Iraqis have to be, what do I have? The Yemenites have kubana. Like everyone has their different. I was speaking to someone from Rhodes Island. They said they have milk meals for Shabbat lunch. Oh. Yeah, they do breakfast. So everyone has different foods on Shabbat lunch. All Jewish, all with similar. If it's slow cooked, it's because you can't cook on Shabbat. And we can share the colors of being Jewish, which is so enriching.
Yeah, like they say, like each community has its wisdom, because it's all connected to something that they understood in their being Jewish in their lands, and how to relate that to the next generation. And so we can learn from that and either adopt it or just learn and do it our own way.
Yes.
Thank you. So I encourage you out there in the audience, out there in the world, share your food stories, share what foods changed or helped form you as a person, you as a Jew, you as whoever you are. And so we love sharing stories. And like Sarah said in our intro, we will share your stories to the next generation as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you for listening. Ayuni, Voices of Our Jewish Grandmothers, is brought to you by Jewish Unity Through Diversity in partnership with Sarah Sassoon. Our executive directors are Drora Arusi, Sarah Sassoon, and Dalia Arusi Di Veroli. Our theme music is by Oshrat Chaim. Please rate and review this episode wherever you're listening to the podcast, and don't forget you can also watch on YouTube. And let us remind you that these stories live on when we share them. So please share your stories with us of women who held together families and communities throughout the ages in different lands. Email us at ayunivoices@gmail.com, and we might feature your story on the next episode. Stay tuned.